Simon. All right, well, welcome to Black History Conversations. I'm Liz Millman from Learning Links International, and I'm with my colleagues Simon Faringo, who's now also a director of Learning Links International, and Garrick Prayogg, who's also joined the board, so that's really good. We've also got with us Jacqueline Pennant, who's joined us from the US, down in the south, aren't you, Jackie? And also Beverly Prevat Goldstein, who's joined us from the north of England. And I gather the weather over there is really terrible, so just stay safe. I'm in Australia, and so I'm just going to start the session of Black History Conversations with an introduction and an acknowledgement to country, which is the traditional way that you do things here in Australia. So just to say then that we're going to have the opportunity to meet Garrick Prayogg with updates on Black History Month and also Justice for Windrush Generation. So Garrick, I'm really pleased that you've prepared something for this session. We'll also be reflecting briefly, and I'll explain why, on lack of justice and need for reconciliation for the First Nations people in Australia and the Torres Straits Islands. And I found, it's great being a discoverer, I found a piece on African history, and that's followed up a comment that Professor Sati made last week, and this time it's about Great Zimbabwe. And we'll have a chat about that in a little while. But just to acknowledge the country on which I'm living at the moment, and then to explain what's been happening this past week since we had a referendum with a vote of no to including a voice for Indigenous people in the constitution of this great nation of Australia. So acknowledgement of country first. So in the spirit of reconciliation, I acknowledge the traditional custodians of this country and acknowledge their respect, their continued connection to the land, sea and community. And I also pay respects to their elders, past, present and emerging, and extend that respect to all Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander peoples today. So really quite a significant day. So the reason that I can't really update you on what's going to happen next is that after the devastation caused by the no vote, and it wasn't insignificant, every state except the ACT voted no to including a voice of the First Nations people in the Australian Constitution. Well, we all know from Brexit that referendums can be pretty disastrous. And in this case, it seems that the slogan of the no campaign, if you don't know, vote no, really convinced a whole lot of people that they didn't know enough about it, so they were voting no. And the awful thing was that they need to know more about the situation that's caused so many of the original people of this continent to still face so much discrimination and difficulty. So really difficult. So what the leaders said was that they declared a week of silence, and then the leaders will come back and suggest what is the next stage, possibly a treaty, possibly they've got other ideas, so we'll see. All right, so I've also introduced this because, Jackie, I think it was you who mentioned it, that we really ought to also acknowledge the injustice of the actions taken by the British and other European countries that invaded and took possession of the islands in the Caribbean Sea, as well as the continents of North and South America. In addition, we also recognise the exploitation of the great continents of Africa and Australia and many other parts of the world in the centuries of colonialisation and ongoing exploitation. This resulted in destruction, destabilisation of so many nations, peoples and cultures. Oh dear, yes. Anyway, there's a map there which I thought was an interesting one. I'm just going to stop sharing the screen because we've got Jackie Pennant with us. Jackie, how did you feel that that acknowledgement seemed? Is it, are we getting there? We've tried various versions of it over the last months.
I like that version. The previous version had the word rape in it, and I wasn't comfortable with that. I like the word exploitation a lot better. And I think it really does center you on, for every session, it centers you on remembering, why we're here, the past, what we're working on. And so it's like a minute to center on why we're here, what we're doing, what we're remembering.
Thank you. And we made a change to that version that included the rape of Africa. And yes, the word exploitation perhaps seemed easier because we don't want to re-traumatize people in an acknowledgement. And that's one of the challenges with the wordings of the acknowledgement of country in Australia are very strictly thought through, and you can't just say anything. You have to say a standard wording. So it's been well thought through. Thank you very much indeed, Jacqueline. I gather you were asking on the chat, what is ACT? Is that right? Okay. It's Australia is divided up with a lot of straight lines into the different states, like Western Australia and Queensland and Victoria, where I am, New South Wales, north of here. But they had to have a space which wasn't in a state for the Australian government. So the ACT is the Australian Capital Territory. Now, I think that's what it stands for. It might be something different, but that's my version of it. And it's around Canberra. So they built a whole new city in order to have a capital that was between Sydney and Melbourne. And that's the that point of that. Does that clarify for you, Beverly?
Yes, but there was something. Sorry, can you hear me? Yeah, there was some. Thank you. So it's a bit like how they set up Ottawa in different places. There's a state that's a government rather than a state.
It's difficult to explain. It's actually I had a map on another PowerPoint. I'll try and find it for you later. It's actually physically in New South Wales, but it's got a clear border around it, and it's got its own local government structure within the ACT. And they'd have their own members of parliament and things in the ACT, but everybody else has members of parliament that go to the government buildings and the parliament, because Australian states come together as the Commonwealth of Australia. That's what they call it, the Commonwealth of.
So maybe a bit like Washington. I think I love the idea. Thank you, Jackie, of the acknowledgement. I did wonder, and I'll have to read it more carefully, as to why South Asia or India was left out.
Good point. Right, let's go back to it, because this is the first time we've really had a discussion about it. This is about Black history conversations. Now, I have to say, last week, Professor Satie said, it's difficult to talk about Black history in Africa because it's all our history. So we really need to talk about Black history, African history, and our shared history. Now, when it comes to Black History Month, there's always been in the UK more of a focus, because it came from America, Black History Month, there's more of a focus on African history, not on Asia and South Africa, Asia and, how did you say? South Pacific. So I put in this. In addition, we also recognise the exploitation of the great continents of Africa, Australia, and many other parts of the world. Okay, so I suppose in my thinking, I'd covered that in many other parts of the world. but maybe I ought to. We could add in here. Oh, sorry, I can't actually write on this at the moment. The great continents of Africa, Asia, Australia, and you see, Australia doesn't cover New Zealand.
Mm.
And I was thinking, I know, how can I put this in? Would you be happier if I included Asia in it? Do you want me to send this to you and you can have a go at the word?
Yeah, I think it's very difficult to get it right. I think I would be happy if you included Asia, just because when you think of the massive exploitation of the South Asian continent of India that happened, I suppose it all comes back to what we think Black means and refers to. And, does it include the Aborigines? Does it include the people from New Zealand, the Maoris? I think there's lots of questions about whether you just put Africa or whether you put the others as well. And if you put in the others, how many others do you put?
Yes, that's very true. Okay, well, we'll give that some more thought, but that's really, really helpful. Thank you very much indeed. I was fascinated, I said last week, by this map because it hasn't even got Australia on it because it hadn't been found by then. Well, it had been found by the people who lived here, but not by Captain Cook. Okay, so what we're going to do though now is we'll carry on, Garrick, and get past that. Right, okay, so where are we up to? Okay, then, so this is Black History Month, 2023, and on behalf of the North Wales Jamaica Society, Black History Work in Progress, that's the slogan we've worked to this time, and it is very much work in progress. Okay, just to say that last week, June Elizabeth White-Smith-Gully joined us along with Susan Botterill, and they talked about Northampton Black History updates. And we did look at some of the new publications that have come out, and Garrick, you're going to follow that up a little more. Then the week before, this is going backwards, Rosemary Caldicott induced her research on the devastating voyage of the Welsh slaver Captain Phillips and his enslaved captives. So that was really interesting, and we talked about the referendum. And then the first launch session for Black History Month, Black History Conversations, we focused on the story of the Jamaica box now displayed at Penrhyn Castle. So this week, Garrick, when do you want your slides? They're just there waiting for you. Okay, then. So, Garrick, thank you ever so much. You've been such a stalwart with Black History Conversations since you've been able to join us. So I'm going to just pass over to you and let you introduce yourself to folks.
Yeah, thank you very much, Liz. And good afternoon, everyone. And good morning if you're elsewhere outside the UK. And also good night, because that is a saying that we do in Jamaica. Good night. So it is nice to be able to have a conversation, particularly around Black History Month and how we connect with Black history. And I say connect because the connection is very important. Sometimes we can read things, but we don't really connect with what we're reading or that particular experience. And I think to start with, maybe the best way to begin is to ask the question, rhetorical, who am I? So for you to know who am I, let me explain and take you back to my roots. So my grandparents, my grandma is a Maroon from the Ashanti Kingdom in West Africa. And my father, my great-grandfather, came from India. So I have Maroons on one side of the family, and I have Indian from another side of the family. And that's where the name Prayogg comes from India. And in fact, my great-grandfather was known as Ari Singh. Ari Singh. So you can see the connection with India. Of course, I also know approximately the date that the Indian side of the family arrived in Jamaica, when the English literally starting to bring people from across the Asian continent. So that was around 1846. What's interesting with my culture and with most of the inhabitants of Jamaica, as we said, out of many, we are one. So, you know, there are many, many races that has made up, you know, a Jamaican. And that is the motto, out of many, we are one. Okay? And when you think about being one, it suggests oneness or unity or of the same mind. That's my thought around the motto, being of the same mind, spirit, connecting as one. I sometimes think about connecting with my ancestors, particularly in August, when we celebrate Slavery Remembrance. It's a time for connecting with our ancestors. And we do that through libation annually, 23rd of August. So that connection, we never lose that connection, even though it's many generations on from then. So that's me, born in Jamaica, roots from West Africa and India, lived in one of the parish known as probably the best parish in Jamaica, East Portland, because that parish is the food basket of Jamaica. We feed the rest of the island and the rest of the parish with agricultural, etc. And that is well known. It is also well known for its beauty. I always tell people growing up, my neighbors, which is the next district, was the Flynn family. That's where Errol Flynn and his mother and his family lived. So I played in their yard with the horses as a boy growing up. And that was Boston. Yeah, it's the next district from Ferry Hill in Portland. So that's a little bit about where I come from. Arriving in the UK as second generation Windrush. My mother arrived 1957. I arrived 10 years later. And finishing my secondary education in England, South London, my first apprenticeship with activism was with Black Power movement, 1970 in Brixton. And we'll show you some photos in a moment of the work that we were doing back then in Brixton, South London. In America, we had the Black Panther movement, and in Britain, we had Black Power movement. And as a young man, just left school, my voluntary work started as an apprentice with the organization, the Black Power movement. And I got to meet people like Linton Quincy Johnson, who was a member of the Black Power House. And I got to meet people like Darcus Howe, was the only broadcaster and journalist in the group. And I got to meet people, Olive Morris, the campaigner. So literally, I worked with Olive Morris on housing campaign, because back then, housing issues in Lambeth was, I haven't even got the word to describe it. So many people would squat in empty houses because they would not, the council, local authority would not give them somewhere to live. So they squat. And back then we had what they call squatters' right. So if you squat into a house and you stay there, then that becomes your property. The council could not get rid of you. You claim squatters' right. And then you would do that house up and you live in that house. It becomes yours. That was the law back then. So Olive Morris, myself and other people, that was our work, campaigning for better housing condition in Lambeth. And if Liz can just give us some of the photograph, I can show you some of the work we did with, that's Olive Morris there. And that was around about 1973, 74. And the strange thing, I lived on this very same road where the Black Power House had their meeting. I lived at number 28, which was my grandmother's property, and their meeting was held in number 36. So literally, I would jump from my house to their meetings. Shakespeare Road, off Railton Road in London, southwest London. So that was what we did. We didn't have all the technology we have today. We had to produce our flyers by hand. Leaflet was drawn, it was produced by hand. And then we deliver those to houses and different places. And we would broadcast using the I forget the name of the phone that is being used there, just to shout and get the message out to people. When Olive Morris died, the work we did was recognized in Brixton, and the housing department became Olive Morris House, was renamed Olive Morris for the campaign work she did for many years. And that was the start of policy changing in Lambeth Council. So, you know, we did achieve some positive outcome. That was just one of many campaigns. Darkus was campaigning on police stop and search, SUS laws. That was the standard thing back then. Yeah. People was harassed daily by police, just for nothing, even standing on the street. That's how it was. So there were many campaigns back in the 70s to address a number of inequality issues. And so where we are today, you know, we have equality laws. I remember the first piece of legislation around race discrimination. And in 1974, the Sex Discrimination Act became law. And a year later, 1975, we had the Race Relation Act. But it was limited in what it could do. But we had something. Gradually, it grew and developed to what we have today as the Equality and Human Rights Act 2010. So those people that has gone before us including Olive Morris, those campaigns have produced better condition for the generation of today. So again, activism is something that most people don't think about. They just do it. Just do it because they want to change things. They want things to be better. They wouldn't consider themselves to be an activist until somebody say, oh, you did all this, so you must be an activist. They didn't associate it. You know, I've always said I was a campaigner. I've always been a campaigner from the 70s all the way through. So when Windrush came about in 2018, it was just a natural continuation to campaign about Windrush and the condition. And when another issue come about, it will be the same thing. We will continue to campaign to make society better and to improve the condition of people. So just a final thought before I sort of open up the question.
Garrick, there's just these two other slides. That you
Yes. Would you mind showing those, please? Because this was the situation back in the 70s in Brixton. So, you know, we were still able to have parties outdoors, in the park, you know, in the street, despite the issues around police, you know, harassment. We were still able to have a good time. And in fact, in 1974, we did a fashion, a fashion, what do you call it? A catwalk, just getting people into fashion. And we didn't call it modeling. It was just, oh, you know, showcasing, you know, your clothes and your personality. And we did all that. And there's a great number of different collection of that period on the internet. If you go back to Brixton 1970, you will see a whole range of photographs of the time involving different people and what life condition was like back then. So I'm thinking, you know, we're now in 2023, and, you know, nothing has changed drastically when you think about it, because we're still fighting injustice. Yeah. So, you know, that has been a continuation. Fighting injustice, fighting for better condition. Not just in the UK, not just in South Africa, not just in the United States, not just in Asia, India, other parts of the world. Yeah. Throughout the world, we continue to challenge the injustice that exists. And I thought we have done all of this and now everything will be okay. And we're back to square one. And it's as if all the work that we've done in the 60s, 70s, and 80s, we're having to redo all of that again. Even though we have equality laws. Back then, we didn't have anything of that nature. But even with those pieces of legislation, people are still experiencing injustices and racism and discrimination in 2023. So that's a little bit about the work I've been doing for the past 50 odd years. And Windrush is a continuation of the exploitation. Many of us knew nothing about Windrush until the scandal broke in 2018. Many of us did not know that people were deported from the UK in the 60s, the 70s, and the 80s. We knew nothing about it until this scandal broke. And we started to learn more about what has happened to the Windrush generation, both first generation, second, third generation, etc. And yesterday, I attended a play in Liverpool, and the title of the play was Deported in Windrush. And this is the writer's note. I'll just read this. This year, I read the book, The Windrush Betrayal, by Exploring Hostile Environment by Mila Gentleman. As I read about the appalling ways from Commonwealth countries residing in England were treated under the hostile environment, I was so shocked and disgusted, saddened and outraged. So I decided to bring this story alive. And the play is based on a real life story of somebody in Liverpool that was deported, removed, first of all, spent time in a detention center, and then removed. However, the story had a good ending because the person was mistakenly removed and was able to overturn that removal notice. And that person came to the UK at the age of 7 without any documentation. As many children who arrive in the UK with family members didn't require a passport. They arrive without documentation. And after 60 years, they said, can you please produce the evidence of your documents, your birth certificate, your landing card, your passport, when they know that you cannot produce that. And the Home Office, who held the documentation, as they have openly said, was destroyed. One version, it was destroyed in a fire. The other version, they could not transfer paper to digital, so they destroyed the paperwork. Hence why people are not able to prove their identity and provide the necessary documentation. And that is what the Windrush compensation scheme and status is all about, to help people to rectify their status, and if they've been impacted, to gain compensation for what they have suffered. So I think I'll stop there.
Oh, thank you so much, Garrick. I was just going to share the screen now and show folks the Justice for Windrush Generations website, which is Justice for Windrush Generations is one of the organisations that you set up, and you meet every couple of weeks online, I think, and it's every couple of months you have a campaign meeting in the Houses of Parliament.
That's correct, yes. So the second and last Sunday, we have a Zoom chat, informal chat. We encourage people to join because many people don't understand Windrush and don't know that their family members may be affected. So we do that twice a month on the Zoom platform, and we do bi-monthly in House of Parliament. And the next House of Parliament event is the 14th of November.
Right, okay.
And this event now that you're just showing up now, Liz, this is the first event in Liverpool, which will be on the 11th of November. We've secured some money to actually do some legal work in Liverpool to help claimant to make, to make claims. What we found, people do not understand how to proceed with an application. So we now have 2 advocates who's legally trained to help with application. And on the 11th, we're focusing on Africans in Liverpool. And the reason for that is that Africans do not understand Windrush. It was the same case, Liz, when I visited the African Association in Bangor. They did not understand that Windrush is part, or they're part of that. And the reason they don't understand, because they see the continual narrative of Windrush ship and the passengers, Jamaican being interviewed, and all the reporter talk about is 500 Jamaican, nobody else. So they make the assumption that Windrush is a Caribbean issue. And we're trying to change that narrative. It's not just a Caribbean issue. It is a global issue affecting people from across the Commonwealth. And that will include people from India. And we're trying to get that message out as far as we can.
Right, that's fantastic. And interestingly, the very next one comes up, and here we go again with the ship. But this is the another event that you have done before. This was advertising before. But yes, you're quite right. It is an issue that Windrush is not just a Caribbean issue. Okay, so what you're doing there, Garrick, is absolutely brilliant. I don't know if anybody's got any questions, Beverly, of you or Jackie?
And I don't have any questions, just to say how very, very valuable it is, how we need that information in Newcastle.
Yes.
Decades, when it first came up about maybe 2 or 3 years ago, and people were putting in a bid about a celebration, I said, no, what we should be doing is helping the people who have been, suffered from this and try and get some compensation. But anyway, I wasn't heard. We've got nowhere, as far as I know, in Newcastle, which is pushing that. But we do know that this is happening, I think, in Middlesbrough, which is quite some distance from Newcastle, in the south of the region. And we're having a meeting, a Northeast of England African Community Association meeting on Saturday. And we've asked the people from Middlesbrough to come up and tell us in Newcastle about the compensation scheme. I think we need more in Newcastle. So I am going to try and get, that Justice for Windrush website.
Yes. Now, this is really good, Beverly, that you raise this, because one of the things that we are pushing is that when you hear about Windrush and what I've just said, talk to your colleagues, your neighbor, your friends, your organization, just share the information with as many people as possible. But because you're in Newcastle, in Northeast, it doesn't mean we cannot communicate with the audience in Newcastle. I mean, that's the reason why we have this Sunday chat, informal, on the Zoom platform. We get people from outside the UK joining that call. So we certainly want to get people, all over the UK. So it's accessible to anyone in the UK. But in your case, for those in Newcastle, they can join the Zoom chat on the second and last Sunday of each month. And then we started a separate conversation. We call it Ask Your Question. So Ask Your Question is a separate thing where people pose question because they don't know what the answer is. And they ask the question to 2 lawyers online, and we answer those questions. And that is Liverpool Advocates for Windrush, abbreviated law. So they provide the advocacy work to help with the application. Yeah. So on a Sunday, we provide the information for people to say, are you eligible to apply to this scheme? Let's check if you're eligible. And then the following week, we offer question time where they can literally raise a question if they're not sure about their own situation or their family situation. And that family could be in the UK or outside the UK. We're now picking up questions from people who has a family in Trinidad and in Jamaica. They want to know what to do because that family has been separated outside the UK.
I suppose, and thank you. Another question, though. I mean, what I've heard is that there's a very low rate of response of people who are successful or who get compensated. Could you tell us the rate, and does that people put people off applying?
Yes, it's a good point. Less than 10%. So at the start of the scandal in 2018, the Guardian estimated 50,000 people would be affected. That was an estimation. In reality, the compensation scheme opened officially in April 2021. Yes. So 21 to 23. We've only been running for just over 2 years. And the number of people that has applied to the scheme, the Home Office produce monthly fact sheet to say, you know, so many people apply and so much money has been paid out. Here's the thing. The EU residents who was affected by Brexit, they were permitted to apply using the Windrush scheme to rectify their status. Listen carefully. And the EU application was almost 5,000. The Jamaican application is just over 3,100. The application from India was just under 200. From Bangladesh, 150. In total, the entire application, when you had all those figures up, amounts to less than 10,000 applicants. And there's over 500 million, and here's a figure, over 500 million that's been allocated to Windrush. They've only paid out 9% of that. And there are good reasons why the situation is what it is. People are very fearful of coming forward, thinking that they might be deported if they haven't got the right papers, documentation. I put this question to the minister in the Home Office to seek assurance. And he gave me assurance in as much as what he said, that anyone who come forward and identify as Windrush is protected under the scheme. Because the idea of Windrush is to rectify your status. If you haven't got papers, if you haven't got a passport, it's to rectify your status. If you've been impacted, that you lost your job, your house, etc., then the compensation scheme is the next thing for you. But your status, we always emphasize, the status is the first thing we need to focus on.
Right. Now, Garrick, you also, I don't know if there's any other questions. There's a couple of points I was going to make, but I was just looking up your email with all the library books in. My other points were, prior to you going on to talking about justice for windrush generations, which is such important work you're doing now, it was really interesting to hear about that earlier work, because it's, you know, many people weren't aware at the time, if you weren't in London, what was going on there in terms of the campaigning and other things. And I was living in a very rural area of the UK, and you know, I didn't know about what was going on. I suppose it might have been on the television, but so it is important that these histories are told and told again. And you know, you're part of Black history in the UK, so that was really, really helpful. Thank you very much indeed.
Interesting, Liz, I just want to mention this. So on Wednesday, I was in Bangor University attending the Black History Month event. And I must say it was a well-attended event. And it also includes some cultural food. So we had sorrel, you know, now listen to this very carefully. So we had jollof rice in a glass. Yeah, jollof rice was served in a glass. And in fact, there were comments about that. Yeah. You know, it shouldn't be served in a glass, but it was served in a glass. We also had Jamaican beef patties, very small ones, and Jamaican jerk chicken wings, as well as there was something else. So it was quite a nice buffet, a finger buffet, very cultural. And of course, the main speaker at the event was Professor Charlotte Williams. And her sister was present also, and I spoke to her sister afterwards. And after she spoke, there was a panel of ladies, because of course the focus for this year is about celebrating our sisters' achievement. So there was 7 women, including Maggie. So Maggie was there. Liz, Maggie was present. And somebody from Congo was there, and somebody from Rwanda or Ethiopia was there. And the conversation was around not just Black history, but about their individual understanding about Black history and their experience living in North Wales. That was also part of the conversation. But just before we started the conversation, Professor, let me just get his name correct, Professor Andrew Edwards, the Pro-Vice Chancellor, opened and spoke about the university and the vision for the university in a race equality charter, which they now have got a charter. They've just started on this piece of work, trying to make the university more diverse. So he spoke, and then he said something, and I immediately took him up on that. And he said, we need some help. We haven't got all the answers. We need some help to progress the race equality and this agenda. So I took him one side and says, yes, I will take that offer. So we're meeting for coffee, okay, just to have a conversation as to how, you know, university can move forward. So I thought that was really positive. I noticed the university in its staff makeup doesn't have diverse tutors, lecturers, etc. And Charlotte Williams made a point, because she could not, you know, they now made her honorary professor, but she made a comment about the university because, you know, she couldn't get a job there. You know, it's like, well, yeah, study here, but you can't work here. And that's not unusual for a lot of people. But and history is not her subject. so she was trying to talk about equality and race, etc. But history, she said, it's not my subject. But she chaired that conversation with the ladies very well, and we've made some really good connection. So I said I was there representing North Wales Jamaica Society. We're trying to develop and grow new members. So I was able to, to give out some leaflets and leave some leaflet in the university for anyone to collect. So the continued conversation with Danielle Williams, she's going to introduce me to some other tutors in the university. So at least we've established some connection. I hope those connections will be fruitful.
That's fantastic, Garrick. Just to say, I'll put you onto my links that I established with the university, and that's really great, because obviously you're much more knowledgeable than me.
And incidentally, Liz, your friend Tony Jones came from the radio, right?
Yeah.
And Daniel did an interview at 5 o'clock for Tony on the radio, and I met Tony in person. So I spoke to him the day before, then I met him in person at the event.
Great. Well,
and we're going to do an interview. You want me to do an interview on his radio show?
Well, that's good news for the North Wales Jamaica Society, and I can't tell you how delighted I am that you're being so proactive. That's really wonderful. Thank you very much indeed, Garrick. Now let's have a look at this wonderful selection of books that are in Liverpool Central.
In Central Library.
So right, we'll have a look through. So we've got Black Victorians. We've got the Windrush book by the Phillips brothers. What's here? Bloody Foreigners. Yes, I think I've got that one. Preeti Dillon's book, The Shoulders on Which We Stand. If any of you have read any of these, do please come in. Home is Not the Place. A new book I've not seen, Granddaughter of the Windrush. And I'm not sure what Carol Phillips it looks like.
Foreigners, something about foreigners.
Yeah, and here we've got another selection here, Black Angels. Amazing stories there. Staying Power, History of Black People in Britain. That's not one I'm familiar with.
Yeah, Peter Fryer, just pause here for a moment, Liz. So Peter Fryer was the reporter that was sent to the Windrush ship on arrival in 1947.
Oh, right.
Could I say, Liz, that book is fundamental. It was written in the 1970s. I have one of the first copies and has been republished in the last 2-3 years.
Right.
You cannot go wrong if you start from that book. It is amazing.
Well, that's a good endorsement, isn't it? Now, one of the things that I haven't said yet is that I've made some progress with the Black History Conversations website, and one of the things that we want to do is to put books, to list some books there, but also, to have an endorsement like that. That's absolutely brilliant. So I'm writing it down in Britain. Brilliant. Thank you very much indeed. That's really great. That one was Peter Fryer. And this is more of those. Right, okay. This is Amelia Gentleman's book, The Windrush Betrayal. She did a lot of the work in The Guardian, didn't she?
That's right,
Excellent.
Here we've got, today's you've got a few of the same. Blacklisted, Black British Culture Explored, Black Americans in Victorian Britain, Black Americans in Victorian Britain. It's interesting. Here we've got Many Rivers to Cross, History of the Caribbean Contribution to the National Health Service. Is that a book?
Yes.
Yeah. And yes, some ones we recognise on the back row. Stuart Hall, familiar. Strange. That's not one I'm familiar with. Another selection here. 100 Great Black Britons. Yes, I've got that one on my shelf here. I haven't started reading it yet, but use it as a reference. David Lammy's story, along with others, in Mother Country. More on Voices of the Windrush Generation. And An Ocean Apart, Call the Midwife Meets Small Island. Gosh, yes, an interesting one to read. And Hakim Eddy's Black British History, New Perspectives. That's certainly one to look out for. I haven't read that one yet. Yeah, amazing. I'm just wondering where I've got the slide for the book. I'm going to get her name wrong, and the Nigerian author who's written the book on Black history.
Is this the controversial one that talks about ancient the British ancient Black British?
So I've been in touch with the supplier.
Yeah,
I'll just myself try and just find where it is, because I'm sounding really vague here.
I was talking to somebody in Bangor about that. That there's some criticism because people don't want to recognize that Black people had populated Britain before. We always do it the other way around. So people are challenging our research.
Yeah, I can't find where my reference is to it. I've just look in my emails, because I've interestingly, I've been in touch with the publishers. She's likely will talk with us.
Good.
In the new year. She can't talk to us now, but she said that she will talk to us next year. I'm sorry, I'm just scrolling down now trying to find the
name. It would be useful if before she talks we could have the name of the book, so we could try and get it or read it or borrow it.
Yeah. We'll do that. Yeah, we'll do that.
Yeah, it's Atinuka's book. I can look it up for you now. Let me just excuse me while I'm just struggling a moment. Worth it, because it's a fantastic book by the look of it. I haven't got but interestingly, my granddaughter absolutely adores her books. So she's previously done a book called Amazing Africa. I don't know how many of you've seen that one.
I've not seen that, no.
But that isn't oh, sorry, you can't see because I haven't put the link on. Here we are. Come on then. You see my zooming here. So these are some of her books. And this Anna Hibiscus, this is my granddaughter's favorite series. She reads chapter book, and she loves those because it's written from a Nigerian perspective. She adores it. So there's this Africa, Amazing Africa. So I'm just going to go back and find where this one is. Can
I say, Liz, one of the interesting things about Anna Hibiscus, my grandchildren also love it, but what things you wouldn't probably do now is not say which country in Africa she comes from. So they speak as if Africa is a country, not a continent.
Yeah.
And all you know is this lovely child, and it is lovely books, comes from Africa. And I think if they were to write now, they would actually say which country.
Yeah. It's a good point, Beverly, because often when people speak about Africa, they speak about Africa as just a small country. They're not speaking. I have to try and explain to people all the time around the culture. So West Africa culture is different from East Africa, is different from Central Africa, is different from North Africa. And they just see it as, oh, just one.
Never mind about that. It's different in the south part of Nigeria to the
Yes.
middle.
Yes,
Oh,
exactly. Yeah.
But this is the book. It's brilliant Black British history, and it's age 7+. So I've actually written to a couple of my friends who've got children in this age range and asked them if they would mind reading it, so that, as you say, if we do get Atinuka to come and speak with us, we really need to have read the book and now I'm going to read it out in case it's not big enough for you to read. It's an eye-opening story of Britain, focusing on a part of our past that's mostly been left out of the history books, the brilliant Black history of England, Scotland, Wales, and Ireland. Did you know that the first Britons were black, or that some Roman soldiers who invaded and ruled Britain were black too? Join this fascinating journey through the ages to meet those first Britons, as well as the Black Tudors, Georgians, Victorians who existed in every walk of life here. An incredible journey through time is brought to life through Atinuka's fascinating storytelling and illustrated scenes, detailed maps and timelines created by illustrator Kingsley Nabechi. From science to sport to literature and law, celebrate brilliant Black people who've helped build Britain. Learn about key and complex historical topics such as the World War, slavery and the Industrial Revolution, Windrush and the Black Lives Matter movement. Isn't it great now that there are books published?
Yeah. There's a whole chronology there, isn't it? A whole timeline there.
This fascinating books will change everything you thought you knew about our grey-green British Isles. So, yeah, and I've also found somewhere, which I'll send round. There's quite a review of it, and it talks about that. Now, let me just try one more thing, because I think it's it's what the publishers sent me. She sent me the teacher's notes that go with it.
Oh,
so
right.
The teacher's notes on, because that asks you to question this. So that would be really good. So I'll be relying on you all to get hold of this book and get and read it. So go to the library, Garrick. I'll see.
Yes, it will be in Central Library. Yeah.
Yes, it will.
Interesting,
Right.
Liz. I'm now reading this book.
Sorry, I'm just
Demerara. This book is entitled Thomas Harding.
Yeah. Yeah, excellent. That will be a really good read. Excellent.
The Demerara Uprising and Britain Legacy of Slavery by Thomas Harding. Yeah. And Dr. Juanita Cox is mentioned in this book. She's also contributed. Yeah.
Heritage.
I went to a very good talk on the Demerara Rebellion by the Methodist Church. It was very, very good.
Right, just to let you know what's coming up next, and then I'll just very quickly share my discovery of the week. Right, where am I? Share screen. Right, so we carry on with some of these sessions. Now, this is my notes on here, so I've taken them off the website. But next week, we've got Dr. Alexander Scott, Alex Scott from the International Slavery Museum, and he's going to speak to us from Liverpool to Lampeter and back, researching and curating transatlantic slavery. Now, it's interesting because Lampeter is in mid-Wales, and we've been talking to Dr. Alex Scott. Garrick and I met him with Leslie to talk about why the International Slavery Museum in Liverpool has so few references to Wales, which is a big hinterland for the development of the port there. So that'll be a really interesting talk next week. And then the following week we will have a break, but we'll have a planning session. So if you want to join, just let me know and I'll send a special Zoom link to you. And the week after that, we've got a really important opportunity. Laura Trevelyan is the person who's worked with others to set up heirs of slavery. These are the wealthy families, a group of them who've got together, and some not so wealthy families, because there's the guy who wrote Blood Legacy, whose name skips my mind, is an active member of that. So that'll be really interesting to hear her story. Then we've got an author, Kate Phillips, and her book Bought and Sold is fascinating, and she's willing to come and talk to us about that. The following week, then, we've got Kate Simpson from the University of Sheffield. Sorry, just going back to that, that's another one that we could do with people having read the book first. So make a note of Bought and Sold by Kate Phillips and see if you can get that out of the library, please. Because that sounds brilliant. And then we've got Kate Simpson, University of Sheffield. This is the link that Simon got for us, and she's also linked with the David Livingstone Centre, and she's going to talk about the book she's writing on the women who were in David Livingstone's expeditions. And then the following week, Nigel, so we've got a lot of authors coming up. Nigel Slater will talk about his research into the history of the troubadour slave ship and its legacy, as well as his book, Legacies of Slavery in Britain, which I was chatting earlier. It's interesting because it was written in 2016 or published. And so it's before the Black Lives Matter raised awareness about legacies around the country. So I think and his Sands of Time consultancy is very interesting. Then he also put me on to Troy Richards, who's the director of a project called the Museum of Diversity. And I think I actually met him when, sounds awful to say, I think it was him or one of the other directors that I met when I went to Lenny Henry's production, Windrush related production, in London. So I remember him introducing himself, and I felt quite ignorant. I didn't know what the Museum of Diversity was. So, and then before Christmas, if Natalie Fagan Brown feels up to it, she'll share her research into the history of black hair. So that's quite a significant range of sessions. So if the weather's awful over there in the UK, or if you want to join from the US, Jacqueline, then we're certainly going to have some interesting speakers. So I think that'll be good. And we'll also be developing the website at the same time and updating you on that. Okay, so I'm just going to find the PowerPoint that I've got about Great Zimbabwe. I was just fascinated. This how you get information. I mean, I'm such an unprofessional Black history researcher. I get my information from everywhere. One of our main projects, we got the information off Pinterest, and I always laugh about that. I was speaking at a university and telling them that, in the story of Robert Rumble, we actually found this interesting information on Pinterest. And that's that. So anyway, right. Okay. So if it's okay, folks, I just wanted to share this, because I didn't know the Great Zimbabwe was a centre of a mysterious African civilization. Only mysterious because it's been kept hidden. It's a medieval city that dominated trade in southern Africa for hundreds of years. Just amazing. So let's go into the big version, then we can read the words. But look at it. Just amazing. Joys of drones. So it's in the hills of the southeastern corner of Zimbabwe near Lake Motirikwi and the town of Masvingo. A great city of stone rises out of the ground and dominates the landscape. I mean, it's massive, isn't it? In its heyday, the city was a centre of massive trading hub, dealt with exotic wares from all corners of the known world. Today it stands empty, as do many of the great castles in Britain and other parts of the world, but it's a great place of history and legend. So this came through something called The Collector, which is where I found it from. As I say, that's. But look at the joys of drone photography, because you can see not only the part that we just saw in that one illustration, but you can see the walls all around here and down here and around here. Absolutely massive. And by the look of it, something over here, but that might be more recent. So just an incredible place. And the first European documented description of Great Zimbabwe comes from the Portuguese captain. And although he never visited the site, he wrote down what he had been described to him. So he said, among the gold mines of the inland plains between the Limpopo and Zambezi rivers, there's a fortress built of stones of marvelous size, and there appears to be no mortar joining them. This edifice is surrounded by hills, upon which are others resembling it in the fashioning of stone and the absence of mortar, and one of them's a tower more than 12 fathoms high. Natives of this country call these edifices Simbayo, which according to their language signifies court. Amazing. So that was my find of the week. But after Professor Satie spoke last week and he said about Black history, you can't really use that term in Africa. I thought we'd better have some segments every now and again about African history as well, because we can get over enthusiastic about Black British history, but we try to cover all areas.
But interesting enough, you said there was no mortar holding the stone. That technique was also used by the Romans, and we see evidence of that in Wales and other places, where there is just stones upon stones, right? No cement in between. How did they achieve that? And these walls are actually still in existence.
Well, I think what's really amazing is that I wouldn't say it of Welsh dry stone walls, because they're not so. I'm just going to put that picture back up again. They're not so regular or even as these, but these ones.
No.
They fit one on top of the other.
Yes.
Whereas in dry stone walls, there's often a gap, but that's interesting. And there are other places around the world where there are more massive structures, which also aren't joined together by cement. But I think we've got.
And all these stones had to be cut. They had to be cut in order to get the sizes.
Yeah. And if you can imagine, that's only just one sort of passageway round.
Yes.
I'm fascinated by the great castle of Benin and all their defences as well. Maybe we'll look at that one time. One of the things that I've done when I haven't had other things to do is to build up a collection of PowerPoints with illustrations about Black history all around the world and different things that I followed up. So again, that may be something that we may include on the website, but it'd be good to have them as well before that. Okay, so I don't know if there's anything else you want to follow up. What have you been doing for Black History Month, Beverly?
Let's have a think. What have I been doing? Oh, it's been non-stop. I think we did, let's see, I think it mushroomed. I did a walk, one of our first walks for the Tyne Archives and Museum staff around the centre of Newcastle. I did that in October. I can't remember, I did something else on the 11th. More recently, I've done things with schools, not necessarily around for Black History Month. Well, I did a workshop on diversity in science with a
All right.
primary school,
Yeah.
which is quite exhausting. And of course, I did it, from a historical perspective as well. I talked about, Latimer and Howard Grant and so, and as well, and the inspirational women we have, and stuff like inspirational Black women scientists. We have 5 absolutely great Black women scientists in the Northeast, one of whom, Juna Sathian, has been awarded a massive number of scholarships and prizes in the last few months. So it was trying to switch children's ideas of what science was. I did something today with Thomas More School. I'd love a cup of tea. Yeah. That was on Black History Month, but unfortunately my computer wasn't working, so it was not the best of talks. I had to use my phone. And then tomorrow I'm doing something for Newcastle University, trying to encourage local Black graduates to do postgraduate work. And it's only a small slot, and I'm going to kind of embed it in history. So the first slide I have, first PowerPoint slide, has one of the Black women, Irene Ihobaro, who graduated from Newcastle University 80 years ago, and then a student who's just graduated. And and similarly, I've got a couple of Black men, even though the talk is inspirational women, again showing that we've got that history of higher education. And then I talk about the inspirational women, and I try and say, what have they got in common, and how are they different, so that all the time we are looking at diversity and commonality.
Right, excellent.
Oh, and then we have our
To have you as a wonderful resource to go and do all these things.
our African event, our Black History Month event for the African societies next week, Saturday.
All right.
So I will be glad when November arrives.
Well, I think that's it. But if we don't Black History Month, there wouldn't be the focus, and we wouldn't sort of launch it into another year of activity. So I must say I find it a bit tiring, because most of the things I wanted to join at sort of 4 o'clock in the morning here or something. Anyway, we're going to wrap things up now. Anything else, Garrick?
No, that's fine, Liz. Yeah, it's past your bedtime now, I know. You got to have your cocoa and your Ovaltine now, isn't it?
Okay. Yeah. I'm at 8% my phone, so I'd better go.
All right.
Okay, Beverly, nice to see you. Okay, take care. And don't forget, spread the word in Newcastle.
I will, just before Windrush.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you all. I really appreciate the books that you have been mentioning.
Yeah.
I'm gonna try and pick up a couple and do some reading. So thank you.
Very good, very good. What's the weather like, Jacqueline, over there now?
It's about 82 degrees.
Oh.
I'm in Fort Lauderdale, so this is our cool season. 82 is cool.
Oh, right. Yeah, my sister is up in Fort Myers.
Okay. Yep.
She was in Fort Lauderdale. She moved, and my other sister is down in Miami.
Okay, so yeah, it's
Silver Lake. She's at Silver Lakes. Yeah.
Yes, know it well. Yeah, weather's good. Can't complain.
Yep. Very good. Yeah, we're having a lot of rain from this storm coming across, hitting Scotland. Scotland is a severe weather warning. Scotland and Ireland is getting a bashing, and Wales is also getting lots of water. So we don't know how long it will continue.
So your base is in Bangor, is that correct?
Yeah, so Bangor is our main city activity.
Okay.
I was there on Wednesday, and coming back at 9 o'clock in the evening, I had to just reduce my speed to 50 miles. So much rain. Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Well, we do appreciate the fact you supported that. Garrick's actually based in the Wirral, so near Liverpool.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah.
So that was great. Thank you so much, and thank you, Jackie, for keeping in touch with us. It's great. Now we're tomorrow. I've got I just need to send out a reminder. We're exploring Welsh, the cloth that was produced to clothe slave workers. So we've got a session on that tomorrow, because there's quite a few new things come up. But then we'll be into next week. So I need to talk with you, catch up as well, Garrick, at some stage. So,
Yeah.
all right
That'll be
then,
fine.
Jack.
Okay.
Okay. All right. Have a good
bye-bye.
afternoon then. Take care.
You too. All
Right.
right, take care. Bye-bye.
Bye.